Wednesday night, and welcome to the ZócaloCast here on YouTube. I am your host, your solo host tonight, Norman Lau. I'm sorry that Char can't be here. Char has some pretty important things that are happening right now. Ooh, one second. Had to do a couple adjustments here. Yes, we are live here at the Zocalo, talking all things Babylon 5. I hope you guys can hear me because I'm working on a new headset system right now, and I hope things are broadcasting well. But what do we do here? For all of you new listeners, new viewers, what do we do? Who are we? John Bowersox, what's up, brother? How you doing, buddy? What do we do here at the ZócaloCast? Well, we talk about all things Babylon 5. We talk about why we love Babylon 5, why we try to keep the support Babylon 5 going live and strong on the airways, and we try and keep that consistency and that torch alive because we are huge fans. We've been huge fans for over 2.5 decades now, and that's what we do. You know, here's the interesting thing about Babylon 5 and Babylon 5 fans. When we're looking at communities online, especially when we search Babylon 5 or try and find groups and organizations across social media, one of the things I've always found interesting about Babylon 5 fans is that without an actual show supporting it or a brand supporting it, I find it incredibly inspiring and just heartening that everyone comes together to discuss Babylon 5 in such a positive way. And when Charlene Schmidt, my partner in crime, and I, when we came together after our respective shows on our other networks that we have podcasts on, we said, you know, you and I both love Babylon 5. She actually did a couple of really great shows on the Nerd Party Network where she had an entire series of Babylon 5 podcasts with her partner, Philip Gilfus, on the Filibuster. And she asked me to come in and talk about Babylon 5 on season 5 because I think maybe I'm one of 5 people that actually love season 5 and support season 5 and what it's all about, because it is kind of like the denouement of the Babylon 5 series. But we started talking about why we love Babylon 5. Why aren't there more, say, live streams now, since I guess live streams are the popular format right now of the time here on YouTube. And if you follow our Facebook group, because I know there are a lot of people on the YouTube channel here that have subscribed and are supporting us. We actually started this a long time ago in a Facebook group far away, about a year ago, where we said, you know what, we need to bring Babylon 5 back to the forefront. And one of the things that really helped us and helped kind of spur that inspiration on was when Amazon Prime decided to stream Babylon 5. And for the longest time, and all you Babylon 5 fans out there know this, that it was really hard to find Babylon 5 to rewatch. And I dropped the word rewatch because that's kind of a big topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. So with Amazon Prime having Babylon 5 on the airways and being accessible, and now Comet TV, which is an online service that you can stream, you can watch Babylon 5 on, you can check your local listings for those schedules. We actually have now sources of Babylon 5 where we can actually go to and binge watch and rewatch and get that word out again, where previously it was really difficult to do. I personally bought 3 complete DVD sets. That's including all of the TNT movies, excuse me, and Crusade, and lent those to people who were interested in Babylon 5. I think I actually have 2 sets that are floating around out there right now. So whoever has those and you're listening, please send those back to me because I want to send those out to other people. So the DVD sets really were, and before that, the VHS, the limited VHS releases and the laser discs were really the only ways that you could rewatch Babylon 5. And those weren't even complete. Those were only boxed sets of certain clusters of episodes or parts of seasons that were very, I guess, they were the important ones. I know that I had the start of season 4, you know, you had The Gathering, you had some of season 1, but they weren't complete. And getting the DVD sets, you got the complete sets plus all the background material, which I highly support and recommend because of all of the behind the scenes stuff, especially what you get with J. Michael Straczynski. So Char and I came together and said, we need to talk about different topics about Babylon 5. And we're like, well, do you really want to do kind of a rewatch style show where you watch it, you kind of report in on the episode and the episode specifics and things of that nature? And we're like, well, no. I mean, we'll get to that eventually. But we want to talk about a variety of topics because Babylon 5, to the both of us, I mean, I think I can speak for Char in saying this. It's one of our favorite shows. It's one of Char's favorite show. It's my favorite show in general. So that in and of itself prompted me to do and move forward with a project like this. So, wow, we have a lot of listeners tonight, and everyone's chiming in. So, Slice of Sci-Fi, thank you for joining us again, John. John, you're probably one of our most consistent Rangers out there. And Thad, what's up, buddy? I'm sorry, I'm going to miss you at Star Trek Las Vegas this year. I just can't make that convention this year, but I'll be thinking about you. And you know what? Use both the red and yellow uniforms. And if the Picard series is sticking with the same color conventions of Star Trek: The Next Generation, then yes, definitely command and ops and engineering for sure. And why not go into medical and science? I mean, I think you'd look fantastic pulling all those off, especially since SLTV is, or STLV is, a long convention. So going back to what we're talking about tonight, and we're talking about a very interesting dynamic that we as fans have. And I'm not just talking about we as fans, Babylon 5's fans specifically. I'm talking about fans of science fiction in general, or any type of genre science fiction. I'm getting ahead of myself because one thing, if you are a new viewer or a new listener, the one thing that Char and I both do, and I'm missing her terribly because we have this great balance that we have together. So, we bounce ideas and we bounce dynamics off of each other. But the first thing that we do is we want to thank everybody for joining us here on the Zocalo, for joining us, supporting us, subscribing to this channel, and sharing it, because we have had a great amount of increased support over the last couple of weeks. And it's because of you that we do this. We thank you for this. And I have my brevari. I hope you do have your brevari as well. And this is a toast to all of you, our listeners and supporters. So, Valtu to you. I hope I just didn't blow out your speakers. Sorry, not sorry. That's the toast for the evening. So, going back to the rewatch dynamic, the interesting thing about a lot of genre fans that I've observed over the course of being a genre fan myself, whether it's the science fiction genre, the fantasy genre, the Western genre, of which I'm a huge fan of, history documentaries, whatever genre that you're into, whatever genre that you like, whatever genre gets you through the daily drive, the mundaneness of the daily activities, whatever you ever find inspiration in, or makes you excited about just being inspired by watching TV. There's an interesting balance out there between going back and watching your genre fiction rewatch and forsaking that time to watch new content. Because as recently, especially over the long 4th of July weekend, Carol, my girlfriend, my partner for 20 years, she started watching shows on Netflix. She started watching Jane the Virgin, which is hilarious. I think the Dead Like Me or something like that. It's with Christina Applegate and Linda Cardinelli. And I wanted to watch those. I want to watch Stranger Things. I want to watch Vikings. I want to watch all these shows that I haven't seen before, haven't watched even for the first time. Even movies. I haven't watched Spider-Man Far From Home. I haven't watched a lot of new things. But I do want to watch Babylon 5 again. So why does that happen? Why do we make that choice of rewatching something in lieu of all of this great content that we have before us, that we haven't watched before? This is new content. This is content that we haven't seen. And subsequently, it might even inspire us to different passions. Because when you watch something that inspires you, you watch something and then you all say, hey, you know what? I haven't seen this. I haven't been exposed to this. This is something new to me. And I think I'm going to go move forward with this. Actually, that's not true. We did just watch Yesterday, which is that movie about, what if the Beatles never existed? I'm a Beatles fan, so I had to watch it. So was Carol. But what tips the scales? Here are the scales. My hands are the scales. What tips the scales of new content that you've never seen before, even in the realm of genre TV that, say, like, if you've never seen The Next Generation, Star Trek, or Deep Space Nine, or Voyager, Enterprise, or haven't accessed the CBS All Access subscription with Discovery and now Picard. What is it about choosing to rewatch something that you know so well already over something that is completely new, completely foreign, and something that may surprise you at every turn because it's something that you haven't seen? And that was a very interesting question to me, because Char and I, Char is doing a show on the Nerd Party Network called Babel for Five, and she and her husband Patrick have just started season 3. And season 3, arguably, of Babylon 5 is the best season and one of the best seasons of TV I've ever watched, if not one of the best season of TV I've ever watched. But that's my opinion. That's besides the point. But, they're going through their rewatch episode by episode. I'm starting my rewatch. I'm sure that a lot of people are starting their rewatches. As a matter of fact, when I was online, I saw a lot of my friends post on social media that they're starting their rewatch of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or Stargate, or Farscape, or Angel, or just watching these for the first time, not even necessarily rewatches. So what makes us go back to the well? What makes us return to what we know so well, what we have seen before? And it's not like we're watching a movie, right? It's not like we're watching a movie for the first time, or something that's very limited in terms of its time constraint, like a 2-hour movie, 2.5-hour movie. We're talking about 5 to 7, say, like in Smallville's case, 10 seasons. If you're a fan of Cheers, 11 seasons. If you're a fan of Supernatural, over 12, 13 seasons. And Stargate, all the Stargate Atlantis, SG-1, Stargate Universal. I don't know all the Stargate, but there are a lot of Stargates out there, right? That's like hundreds and hundreds of hours of rewatching TV. So before I jump into that point, I would just want to take a look at the chat. The chat is going off. You guys are amazing. So let's go. I gotta scroll all the way back here. So John, everything is working great. Thank you. I hope the sound is coming okay, well enough. Slice of Sci-Fi, thank you for joining us. I haven't seen you on the podcast or this live stream podcast before, so thank you for joining us. Very, very grateful for you to join us. You say hola Babylon 5 fans. Hola to you as well. ¿Qué tal? John says, I think if we have great storylines that you can keep people still talking about it for 2 decades is really crazy and great. I agree. I said this on the last podcast before. I said, you know what? Quality never fades. Even though that you have effects or technology of the time that timestamp or date a certain era of television. The 90s is pretty notorious for that. Aside from that, great storytelling always exists, lasts, and finds new audiences because it's about characters, it's about characterizations, it's about the morality of the story, it's about how it connects to you. Slice of Sci-Fi says, did you notice Tim and I talked for 7 years about a show that only ran 5 seasons plus Crusade and movies? Slice of Sci-Fi, are you Babylon 5 podcast? I think you are. Just because you said Tim. So anywho, please let me know. John says that I'm sure it was hard to find back then. Yes, Babylon 5 was extremely hard to find back before the days of being able to purchase your media and collect media. Let's see. Slice of Sci-Fi says Hulu even had the original version of The Gathering with Stuart Copeland's soundtrack. Yes, good point. Good point. And I wish Hulu continued that. I knew you were from Babylon 5 podcast when you said Tim. Hi, Summer. Thank you for joining us. I love the Babylon 5 podcast. I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's the oldest Babylon 5 podcast that I know about, and I've listened to it for a long time. So thank you for joining us. I'm very honored that you are joining the podcast here. Sean Dempsey has joined us. Sean's a great friend of mine. He's I consider a brother to me, and I'm glad. Now, Sean is one of those fans that Sean, you never watched Babylon 5 at the beginning, so I think I suggested that to you. You know, he and I are Highlander fans from the Highlander TV series days of from 1992 to 1998, the 5.5 seasons of Highlander that happened. So thanks, Sean, for joining us. I'm glad you're here. And I think I want to jump into what I was talking about why we choose to rewatch things. Now, I always watch Babylon 5 every year. Sometimes I've watched it twice a year. And friends of mine have asked me, it's like, why haven't you watched Breaking Bad? Why haven't you watched Vikings? Why haven't you watched Sons of Anarchy? Why haven't you watched all of these shows? And with the proliferation of shows that increase year after year after year, because of all of these streaming services like Amazon Prime's original, I haven't watched The Man in the High Castle yet as much as I want to because I love that type of genre history. I haven't watched a lot of things, but I will make time to rewatch Babylon 5. And when I say rewatch Babylon 5, sometimes when I'm gaming, because I'm a huge gamer, I'm a huge World of Warcraft player. I love World of Warcraft. I'll play World of Warcraft and I have a second monitor on the side playing Babylon 5 because I don't really need to pay attention to, say, season one's like TKO, for example. Nothing that I really need to pay strict attention to. But when I start hitting things like season 3, when we're watching things like, War Without End part 1 and 2, when you go into obviously Zahadum, when you go into season 4 and you're talking about all the stuff that's happening with the Civil War and telepaths, yes, sure, I'll pay attention more to that. But, the rewatch is a quote unquote light rewatch because we know these shows like the back of our hand. Most of us do, especially if we're big Babylon 5 fans. So there are parts in the rewatch where you obviously you're paying attention, like more so than others, and some you can just kind of get by with just the audio track, which is a lot of fun. If you've not watched if you haven't done a rewatch in a while, really pay attention to the audio track. The audio track is a lot of fun because you hear things in the dialogue and the way that the dialogue levels are split, where you're just like you haven't heard that before. So that's kind of fun and interesting to hear. But Babylon 5, or the genre that you want to listen to or rewatch, I almost kind of equate that to comfort food, right? Because, and the restaurants that you like. It's hard to go out and try out a new restaurant when you're really excited to eat a certain dish, test a certain food, try a certain cuisine, and it doesn't quite hit the mark of the restaurant that you chose not to go to, the go-to restaurant that you love. Whether it's a diner or whether it's a sit-down dress-up or whether it's a T-shirt and jeans, it doesn't matter. You know that you're going to get that meal, the meal that you've had time and time again, and you know for that $12.95, $15.97, $20, $17, $20, that meal is going to be exquisite. Doesn't matter what the meal is. It's just that you know that you're going to walk away, go to bed happy. That's, for me, what Babylon 5 is. It's that comfort meal, that comfort zone, that level of trust, that ability to be able to relax, enjoy, and sometimes even find something new to anchor myself to inspire myself with, to be more passionate about. That's what I find so interesting about watching a series time and time again. Now, that's not to say that I'm not going to get that from a new show, and that new show is not going to take me to different places where I think I can, find different types of inspirations or passions or ways of being able to understand and appreciate new narratives, new production values, this, that, and the other thing. But when you choose to go back to something that a 25-year-old series like Babylon 5, and I'm going to put this out to all of you, what do you get out of rewatching it? What do you bone up to anticipate and appreciate? And what do you want to see again? Have you been focusing on characters that you know and love and appreciate, but want to focus on new characters and their storylines? Are you a hardcore Jeffrey Sinclair fan, even though that we only had Michael O'Hare for that first season? Or have you focused on the 4 seasons with John Sheridan and want to try out, say, you know what, I've focused on Sheridan's storyline. I want to see what's going on with Delenn more. I want to see what's going on with Char more. I want to see what's going on with Londo more this time. Do you choose a different path? Do you want to focus on different things? Do you want to focus more on the politics of it? Do you want to focus more on the comedy of it? Do you want to focus more on all of the different factions, the Minbari history, the Centauri history, the Narn history? Do you want to see like all the secondary characters in a different, like, especially the attachés, the side characters, like Veer and Lanier and Natath, and even the special characters like Drawl, like Mr. Morden, like Mr. Bester. These are all characters that, every character in Babylon 5 has a purpose, has a reason. And I'm not saying that other shows don't, but what do you want to see in your rewatch? For me personally, I've always focused on Char. Jakar's my favorite character. Andreas Koutsoulis does no wrong in this series, in my opinion, ever. So that's just something that I want to throw out to you and see how you feel about it. So I'm going to go back to the comments here. Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. The comments are coming so fast and furious. So Sean, you said, let's see, your daughter is watching Supernatural for the third time. It's 14 seasons. Amazing. That's like almost 3 times the amount of Babylon 5. Let's see, she's in California right now, and I just texted her and asked her why she keeps rewatching. She says because it's a great show and sees new things each time. That's perfect. That's exactly why we rewatch shows, because we want to find something new. John Bowersock says, Highlander, I could binge watch that show many times because Adrian Paul and the other actors. But what do you get, John, out of rewatches? What do you discover? Do you discover new things? Do you follow different storylines? Do you follow different focuses? Slice of Sci-Fi says, Highlander TV show is on my list on Hulu. Please do watch. Let me know what you think. I know a thing or two about Highlander. My friends here, John, Sean, that they all know. I used to run a Highlander podcast called Blood of Kings on the Fandom Podcast Network with my good friend and brother, Kevin Reitzel. Let's see. Slice of Sci-Fi says, newer shows that I watch again and again. Killjoys, Stitchers. Sorry to meet you on this. I started watching Killjoys. I really, really like Killjoys a lot. I got to get back to that on the Sci-Fi Channel. But then again, this goes back into the time being finite, right? And having the lull. Usually the lull happened for a lot of us who are of an age. The lull happened after the May sweeps, and then the mid-season or the end of the season, and the cliffhanger that usually happens in May, usually of when seasons happened. Like let's take, for example, like Star Trek, The Next Generation, season 3, the cliffhanger of Best of Both Worlds Part 1 that happened in, I believe it was like May or June. And then you had to wait that entire summer, like Seth MacFarlane said, the torturous entire summer until we got back to September and saw what happened after Riker said fire, and then it went to black, and then had the dun dun dun. So yeah, that summer season is usually when we went into rewatch mode, where we would catch reruns. If you're of a certain age, you do remember reruns. We don't really have that anymore since we have all the access to the internet that we have right now. You can watch anything, anytime, anywhere. But back in the day, we had reruns. We had, okay, they're going to start rerunning things. And usually that kind of happened out of order, but it didn't matter because you didn't see it in real time anyway. So you were just glad to see it, hopefully get it on VHS, and then talk to somebody about whether or not this was in the right order. It didn't matter. Like there was a stage that it really didn't matter. Let's see. So John says, that's easy. Character development of each character in the show. Yeah, character development is huge. When we rewatch shows, we want to rewatch certain nuances of the character development, certain performances that we didn't notice before, certain clues that we didn't see before, certain directives, drives, certain, clues, that you didn't see in characters before that dropped. And you're like, okay. But that we're all smart enough to know that when actors get scripts, or when the actors get several scripts, they're not really sure exactly where their character is going, so they can't really plan that performance. You kind of like, well, it sure seems that you knew, but you have to trust into the system. And in this case, Joe, you were able to trust that system because, he had everything mapped out. I'm glad Slice of Sci-Fi said Naroon, because Naroon, for me, John Vickery as Naroon can do no wrong. Naroon's storyline, I said this in a previous episode about secondary characters that we loved. Naroon is at the top of my list because there's so much there in that character, so much that happened to him over the course of his development. And I love watching Babylon 5 to just pay attention more to a character like Naroon, because Naroon just has so much going for him. And John Vickery brought a lot to that character. So in terms of why we rewatch, we rewatch for, the inspiration. We rewatch for the safety of certain series. We know that investing that time and being able to sit down and enjoy something, and that you can count on that, is very important to us as genre fan viewers. Again, just like going to the restaurant analogy, it's like, that when you go there to go to your favorite restaurant, you order your favorite dish, or even go, oh my gosh, God forbid, go off menu and trying something new, that the restaurant's going to provide something for you that you like. So comfort level is a huge thing when we do rewatches. We know that we're going to get a certain thing. We know that we're going to have a product that delivers. But how much of that are we trusting and making a sacrifice against things that we haven't seen before? Does that ever become an issue for you? Does that ever become part of the equation of, I'll watch Babylon 5 again this year, but I really should watch these 5 other shows? Does that ever become an issue? Does that ever become a point of contention? And what the funny thing is, it doesn't for me. I've never, ever, ever questioned my Babylon 5 rewatch. And I'm going to do something for the first time, because I'm not really a huge social media user. Yes, as the ZócaloCast, we're on Twitter and on Instagram. We have our Facebook page, but I've never really done something as real time or as active in real time as, say, like a live tweet. I've known people that have watched Star Trek, the original series, for the first time, and they're live tweeting out there, and that's fine. That's great. I think that's very, very cool. But I've never really done that myself with Babylon 5. So maybe, hopefully, that'll inspire some people to watch. But I've never really done that as a rewatch before. So that's something that's different this time around, is that, will I be paying attention to the episodes as they are being shown? Or because I know what's coming, I'm going to be able to text out, tweet out, message out my experiences as they're happening? And does that do any kind of disservice to the rewatch? I don't know. I mean, like I said earlier, I'm a World of Warcraft player. So usually when I do a lot of grinding for whatever reason for leveling, I'll have Babylon 5 in on the side. And sometimes, even episodes that I know super well. One of my favorite episodes of all time is Believers in season 1. And I will straight up stop whatever I do and watch that. Now, that brings me to a funny story, because rewatching, I think, is something that's inherent to a lot of us that didn't have a lot of content at our disposal if we are a certain age. I'm 47. Okay, I'm proud to admit that I'm a 47-year-old geek. But when I was in my earlier years, and I'm talking like in my teens into my early 20s, whenever I was either at home from school or visiting from school, I would always sit down and watch something like Star Wars or Aliens, one of my favorite movies, or Big Trouble in Little China, also one of my favorite movies, Amadeus. I'm watching something that I've watched time and time again. And we only had one TV in my parents' house. When my dad was alive, he would come down and just look at me. I'm on the couch. It's summertime. I should be outside. And he looks at me and I'm watching, let's say, Space Seed, Star Trek, the original series, right? And he'll say, "Why are you rewatching that again? Haven't you? How many times have you seen that?" And I never really had a good answer there, because it doesn't matter how many times I've seen it. What matters is that I'm enjoying that just as much then as I did before. And I think that in rewatches, that's something that we depend on. That's something that's very personal to us. And I know that even sometimes when you're doing rewatches, you don't want any distractions. And that's for some people. You want to be able to put that episode in, kick up your feet, grab your favorite glass of Bavaria, as I am now, push play, and watch that episode and revisit characters that we consider important to our lives, characters that inspire us, storylines that make us passionate about what we are watching, narratives that engross us to the point where we lose track of time. That type of total immersion from a TV show, I think, and I've personally experienced this, is what rewatching TV is all about. So, wow, again, I got to get back into these the comments here. Wow. Jeez, you guys are the best. Okay, so Thad, yes, I agree with you. Andreas Katsoulis did no wrong in everything he was in. You know, in the previous show, we talked about actors who appeared in Babylon 5, and some of these were Star Trek actor crossovers, and he's been in a lot of our genre TV. And if you all didn't see him in Harrison Ford's The Fugitive, he played the one-armed man, which was super cool. Killjoys, slice of sci-fi. Killjoys is your new Firefly. That's bold. That is a bold and spicy statement. I like that. I dig that. All right. John Bowersock says, I just love the storylines that happened in Highlander and see Mac grow as a character. I dig that. You know, I do. Slice of Sci-Fi says, I like how they changed up the swordplay choreography depending on what type of sword the people that was fighting used. Though you're talking about Highlander. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You also said, when LOL, while we did the podcast, me finding out that John Vickery was the voice of Kenjiro in the US dub of Fist in the North. Was he really? That just melted my brain as well. Oh my God. That's awesome. Sean Dempsey, the restaurant analogy is perfect. Well, you know, food's very important to us. Great food is also is paramount to us, and being able to depend on that meal can make the difference between a great day or a terrible day. And a great day could turn terrible with a bad meal, and a terrible day could turn great with a great meal. Same thing with genre fiction. Same thing with something that you invest your time in. Slice of Sci-Fi says, I watch a lot of shows, and for the TV reviews I give a show 5 episodes before doing a review. Sometimes that gives me an inkling about whether a show has what it takes to hook me or not. You know, I agree with that statement a lot, because when I started watching The Orville, which is now one of my new favorite shows, the first 2 episodes were very much in the vein of what I expected from a Seth MacFarlane / science fiction show, because I know that he pitched The Orville as being a science fiction comedy, a la the style of comedy that he is obviously known for, Family Guy, Ted, things of that nature. But when it really became his own, I really do think The Orville is one of the best science fiction shows that I've seen out there. It's entertaining. It's still raw, raunchy, but very human and very much in the vein of where Star Trek used to be. Yes, I did say used to be. John Bowersock says, it does become a problem for me because there are too many shows I want to watch, not enough time in the day. Yeah, this, LOL, Slice of Sci-Fi responds, I totally understand that. Again, that is the great dilemma that we're at right now, because when we were of a certain age, you know, those of us that are, you know, children of the 80s, we didn't really have a lot of great and accessible, that's the big thing, and accessible media, genre fiction media. Now, sure, we had the reruns at the time. You know, we had the original series, Star Trek TOS. We had Battlestar Galactica. We had Space 1999, of which I'm a huge fan. We had Doctor Who, the Tom Baker years, because, you know, of his 7-year span of Doctor Who on public TV. But those were, you know, there were a handful of rerun shows. You know, because at the day, you know, during the 80s, you know, you had a lot of your sitcoms. You know, you had your Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley. You had things like that. You know, in the 80s, there wasn't, again, you know, it was I wouldn't say burgeoning TV. You know, there was a lot of TV, but a lot of it kind of like, you know, there was a handful of really good genre fiction, science fiction, genre fiction that you could watch. And nowadays, you know, because of the birth and the rise and the proliferation of a lot of science fiction, fantasy media, like your Killjoys and Dark Matter, like the new Doctor Who that started with Christopher Eccleston back in, like, what was it, 2005 or 2007? You know, Battlestar Galactica, the revision series, the Ron Moore's revision series. You have all that stuff, plus all the stuff that you can access online, plus all the new content you're getting on Netflix again and Hulu and DC Universe, and Amazon. So much is competing for your attention that do you feel guilty at all about not even trying that versus watching Babylon 5 again? Personally, I don't. I don't feel guilty about that at all. It's just because I know what I'm going to get with Babylon 5, and I challenge myself at the same time to find something new in Babylon 5. Now, Char and I actually made a point about something in the last episode when we were talking about the political parallels that we are seeing with what happened in Babylon 5 with President Clark and the Night Watch and the gross levels of intolerance that certain factions of Earth were perpetrating against alien species. Okay? When you watch that then and extrapolate and see how that dynamic is playing out now, that is something in a rewatch that you have to pay attention to, because that is actually a very specific, significant, real-time dynamic that is being exercised upon the times and the political structure of today. Now, I don't want to get too political about anything on this show. That's not what the show is about. But 25 years ago, or in 1990, was it 1994? Was it 94? No, sorry, 92. When Babylon 5 first premiered. Am I right about that? This is all from the Yonagi. When that happened, the political climate of the time wasn't as similar. We were dealing with I think at the time was like the post-Bush, pre-Clinton era, somewhere along that time. So the grand paranoia of how the presidency and how the political structure of the time was working wasn't really quite as prevalent in the same dynamic as it is now. So when you watch episodes of Babylon 5 that have to deal with President Clark, the Night Watch, the oppression of that regime, the Home Guard, draw your own conclusions. But I don't think I'm far off about that. And I don't think that Straczynski was even projecting that this far forward into the future. How could he? However, history being what it is, and history sometimes repeating itself, it's not an unreasonable conclusion to jump to. So back to the rewatch and why we do it. And I want to get to some of these comments here before I get to my next point. So 47, the perfect Star Trek age. Well, it's 47. Just goes without saying. Let's see. Sean says, I remember getting yelled at by my mom for rewatching an episode of Lost in Space when I was like 12, when we had guests at our house and I was ignoring them. I did the exact same thing. I was down in my basement. I was watching TV on my parents' gigantic TV furniture cabinet, cathode ray tube TV. The kind where you pulled the knob and that little white dot kind of flickered on. I was watching Battlestar Galactica from 1978 to 1979 on WUAB Channel 43, Canton, Ohio. But then again, that's getting to my next point. In the 80s, there was much other sci-fi in reruns other than Twilight. In the 80s, was there much other than sci-fi in reruns other than Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, and Trek? Slice of Sci-Fi says, I don't. Here and there, yeah. I mean, like I said, yeah, Battlestar Galactica. I'm not sure exactly where Space 1999 was in the rerun pool. Jerry Anderson's UFO. You had a lot of the Jerry Anderson marionette animation, like Thunderbirds and things like that. But I'm not sure, like for rerun quality and rerun accessibility, I'm not sure. I mean, on PBS, we got Doctor Who. On a lot of affiliate stations, you had a lot of the black and white Outer Limits, obviously Twilight Zone. But I mean, think about what you can get to today, like not just in terms of finding shows from a certain era that you've never seen before, and compare that to a lot of the new shows that are coming out now, like The Expanse, like Killjoys, all of these newer science fiction shows that are coming out, like Sense8, JMS's Sense8 on Netflix. I mean, everywhere you turn, there's something new, or there's something new that came from decades before that you never saw before, because they're available now. You can find them on YouTube, you can find them on Hulu, you can find them online anywhere. So, and for me, here's something that I just started watching that I fell in love with almost instantly. And friends of mine on the Fandom Podcast Network Type 40 Doctor Who show recommended this to me, and that was Blake 7. I've never seen Blake 7 before, but also Babylon 5 fans recommended that to me because it really is a truly serialized show where shows continue from end of episode to end of episode to end of episode, and it's fantastic. Char Avon is one of the greatest characters I've ever watched in my entire life, and this is happening in like the mid 1970s, right? So it's like, and how do you miss something like that? Because I was a fan of science fiction early on. I got my Starlog magazines. I got my Cinefantastique, my Fangoras, and you always saw ads for Blake 7 or Space 1999 or UFO or all of these other kind of like B-level, midstream, mainstream shows that were never really given the prominence that say like, anything of the Star Trek genre or Star Wars genre was given, because those are the quote unquote tentpole, science fiction genres of ever, right? It's like, throw Star Trek on something is fantastic. Throw Star Wars on something is fantastic. Up, in that day, because back in the 80s, it was Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and Star Trek at that time, in the 80s, it was the original series, the motion picture. And then through the 80s, you had, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, you had The Search for Spock, you had The Voyage Home, right? So there was a handful of things that were always kind of metered out and parsed out with enough time in between to be able to enjoy those. And especially with video, especially with movies, there was a certain time that you didn't have the rewatchability of those. So you couldn't rewatch an entire series of movies that you can right now. I could go to my cabinets right behind me here, open them up and get the entire series of Star Trek movies, not just the original series Star Trek movies, but Next Generation and also the J.J. Abrams verse as well, at my fingertips. And I don't even have to go to I have them on digital download. So going back to the rewatch thing, and it's one of my last points that I really want to make, and I really want to hear from you about this. How much does nostalgia play a part in choosing to rewatch certain shows? How much is that an influence to you? Because every single time that we rewatch a show, we're a little bit older, hopefully a little bit wiser, and our perspective of our lives, our own personal lives, change in regards to that fixed narrative, that fixed experience that is that show. For example, Star Trek, the original series, when I was younger, was pure entertainment. Seeing the Gorn in Arena, fist fight Kirk, on I want to say on what's that mountain range in Southern California? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Seeing them do that was just pure entertainment gold when I was younger. At Vasquez Mountains, that's pure entertainment gold. But now, understanding what the Metron's mission was and pitting Kirk versus the Gorn captain together, it was about mercy. It was about the aspect of evolving to a more merciful species. Did I get that when I was younger? No. Do I get that now? Absolutely. So when I watched Babylon 5 the very first time of its run through, certain things, especially the evolution of Char and what he went through from being this basically a war profiteer and someone who was trying to embolden or propagate the Narn regime's stature, in this Babylon 5 universe of political power and influence. I mean, look at what he did. Look at what he became. Do you really get that at a certain age? Do you really get like the sacrifices that he made? Do you really get like the transition of spirituality in that character that happened? Do you realize how dark Londo really became? Do you realize that, like in the episode Knives, when he and Veer were singing the opera, that's one of the purest times, the one of the last purest times you actually saw Londo enjoy life? One of the purest times that you actually saw him experience true joy as a Centauri, seeing his friend, seeing Urza Jado, seeing Skaltura, reliving the days of the old empire, the days of glory, before he really, really settled into his path of darkness, before the mass drivers started bombing Narn under Lord Reefa's command. I mean, think about that. When I was in my 20s, I was like, damn, that is some good looking graphics. That Amiga computer is killing it on the CGI. Look at those asteroids getting fired from that Narn heavy cruiser, but now understanding that the level of mass murder that was happening to the Narn, getting bombed from space by asteroids because of what? Racism, xenophobism, hatred. All of that stuff at a certain age becomes way more different, way more impactful when you're watching it. One of the most powerful scenes, I think, inarguably in the history of Babylon 5 is that reflection that Londo has, that the cameraman captures when he's looking at Narn being bombed, and there's that just look of just sheer disgust. It's like, what have I become? What have I sacrificed to do this? Is it worth it? What did I do? And knowing that, seeing that as a different person from your 20s to your 30s to your 40s, that's an amazing experience to behold. Seeing Char admit in prison, or when he was when he was incarcerated, saying that saying where he said everything outside is meant to distract you from yourself. When you're alone in silence, you can't escape from who you truly are. I mean, think about that. The concepts of that are staggering, because when, again, we become a certain age, you're like, yeah, especially in this age of social media, when everything is just, they're firing all these different sound bites at you and all these different memes and all these different, all this noise. And when all this noise can get shut out and things can get quiet, and you realize and focus on what's truly important, you realize how much it really is distracting you from yourself, what you truly want, who you are, and what you truly want. And I find that utterly fascinating when I do this rewatch. Now, that is why I believe rewatches are so powerful, because there's something about the show that you're watching in particular that has inspired you to watch it in total and ultimately inspire you to rewatch it again. The meanings, the morals, the character development, the narrative structure, the dynamics, the parallels to your life at that time, the parallels to your life as you grow older with the show, and how that show still means and still finds a way to talk to you so many years later, whether you were there at the beginning or whether you're watching it right now for the second or third time. I think that is the hallmark of a quality show, and one worth rewatching, and one worth putting on those scales and say, hey, you know what? I could watch this new show, or I could rediscover something about myself, reinvest the time in watching that show, in this series, and evolving once again as I have evolved before when I watched this show last year or the year before or 10 years before. Because I think that when we do that, when we rewatch a show, we find something new, not just in the show, but about ourselves, about who we are as a person right now, and looking at ourselves when we were 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And you can say that about Star Trek, the original series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, because all of those have taken very many fans, huge populations of fans, through huge moments of their lives. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is one of my favorite shows. And it's because there was a certain point in time in my life where I needed that show. And that goes back to not just the nostalgia part, but to my final point. Sometimes we need to rewatch that show. We need that show back in our life to provide us with some type of stability, trust, to reset the palette, to start fresh again, to remember what it was to be a fan, to block ourselves from all the noise that's out there that is corrupting the very essence of who we are as these geek genre fans, to be able to be inspired again, to be able to laugh again, to be able to find joy in what we're watching, to be able to revisit old friends in these characters, and to remember the times that we had going to conventions, inspiring other people to watch the show, going into cosplay, making those uniforms, making those costumes, going to those events, coordinating those parties, watching Sleeping in Light and crying with every single person in the room, men and women alike, because that's what Sleeping in Light does. It does to me every single time I watch it. And I know what's coming. And I think that's the strength about Babylon 5. You know, especially when you've watched it as many times as many of us have rewatched it. You know what's coming. And it still affects you emotionally and as powerfully as when we first watched it. Maybe if not even more. Because we are all watching it through the lens, the prism, the focal point of who we are right now. Right now. And where our life experience has brought us and how those genre fandom shows affect us because of who we are right now. And I think that's a very powerful thing to have. And I pity those who don't appreciate or find that type of personal fulfillment from something like this. Because in many ways, it's a very deeply personal form of therapy, a very deeply individual way of resetting our own lives, of being able to clean the slate, reformat the hard drive, wipe the slate clean, clean off the chalkboard, however you want to do it. Because ultimately, these types of shows bring us true joy, true happiness, true sorrow, true pain, true angst. Anyone here that's watching this, listening to this, or will be listening to this, if you weren't crying when Ivanova was spilling her soul out to Biggs, to Franklin, after Marcus sacrificed his life for her, I'm not sure if this show's for you. Because even thinking about it right now, it's just like, wow. If you're not in tears at the end of Sleeping in Light, or when Delenn reaches her hand out, stretches her hand out on, trying to touch Sheridan one last time before that perfect Sunday drive. I'm not sure if I can sell you on that. But for those of us who know, you know that these moments are going to happen. These moments are going to be there for us. We want them to happen because we want to be able to emotionally reconnect with the power of that inspiration. And that is so profoundly meaningful to each and every one of us, regardless of the series that you watch. You could be watching anything, but as long as that series returns you to a point where you yourself find great value, comfort, passion, whatever you need to find to make you a better person, to make your day better, to make it worth moving forward through, that's why we rewatch things. And it's a shame that I'm not sure that if every single show out there can do that for you, but I know that Babylon 5, since we are Babylon 5 vidcast, Babylon 5 does that for us. So before I close out the show here, I want to get back into some of these comments because everyone here has been just commenting so fantastically, and thank you so much. John Bowersock says, I still watch the original Star Trek to see Dr. McCoy because I love DeForest Kelley acting. You got no argument for me. He's the heart. He's the heart of that triumvirate. Kirk is the ego. Spock is the logic. McCoy is the heart. That's what makes that dynamic work so well. And I think you see a lot of that in Babylon 5, albeit in a different way. There's a different dynamic. There are more players involved from a main character standpoint, but you see a lot of that interaction being very important to the development of the characters in that show and how to push the narrative forward. Slice of Sci-Fi says, I really enjoyed Buffy and Angel, but Angel is the show that I binge rewatch from time to time. I get that. I hear that a lot. Now, Buffy was my bread and butter. Buffy, spoiler alert, just in case people haven't watched Buffy yet, in season 2, which is my favorite season of Buffy, when there is that encounter with Angel at the end, at the series finale, that, oh my God, that is right up there with Sleeping in Light for me. Oh my God, that was just heartbreaking. And of course, they have to play a Sarah McLachlan song just to basically wring every single tear out of your heart, like ever. So yeah, I get that. I tried. Slice of Sci-Fi says I try to rewatch Firefly at least once a year, and rightfully so. And here's the funny thing about that: it's like at least with Firefly, you're only getting like a handful of 13 or 14 broadcast episodes plus 3 or 4 that were produced and never shown. So yeah, Firefly's genius. And here's an interesting thing, and I'd love for everybody to comment either here or on the Facebook group or on Twitter. When I'm talking about rewatching Babylon 5, the one thing that I didn't touch on, when you watch Babylon 5, when you rewatch Babylon 5, does that include, of course, all of the TNT mini movies and Crusade and Legend of the Rangers and The Lost Tales? Because for me, it does. I have to watch everything, encapsulate all of the productions of Babylon 5, but I know for some people it's just the 5 seasons, and I get that, but for me it has to be everything. Slice of Sci-Fi says Sleeping in Light makes me cry every single time. Yeah, I'll be the first one to admit it. I am crying ugly man tears. I know Char and I have had this conversation time and time again, and even when we start thinking about it or talking about it, that scene where Sheridan puts on his Anla Shock uniform, and he says, and Delen's there in her beautiful white robes, and she says, I have on good authority that today is Sunday, the perfect day for a Sunday, and then Sheridan says, a perfect day, that in that gruff John Sheridan voice, a perfect day. So good. So if you are planning on rewatching Babylon 5, if you're planning on rewatching any of your favorite genre fiction, keep this in mind. 1, why are you watching it or rewatching it again? 2, what are you getting out of it that you didn't get out of before? And 3, do you want to do you watch this or do you rewatch this with other friends, with other people that are at the same level of passion that you are? And are you all communally getting something out of this experience? Because most of the time we all kind of experience these rewatches in a solo endeavor, a solo venture. We're watching it for ourselves for whatever reason. I should say by ourselves. But reach out to our community when you're doing your rewatch and share your experiences with us, because I think that we have a lot of common ground when it comes to that, when it comes to episodes like my favorite episode, And the Rock Cried Out in the Hiding Place. Because that scene when Char plays Londo's video, his hollow video, and turns the tables on Rifa, and then they start kicking it with no hiding place down here. Oh my God, that is one of the best scenes I have ever seen filmed ever. And the demise of Lord Rifa is just delicious to watch. So good, right? So please join me in my rewatch on Twitter. Please follow us on the ZócaloCast on Twitter, on Instagram. Make sure that you sign up for all the updates here on YouTube. I'm pointing down at the whole. If you like us, please subscribe. Please make sure that you hit the bell for all the updates. We do this actually, we are going to be changing times. This is something new. I forgot to mention this earlier on in the show. This will be our last broadcast on Wednesday night. Char and I are going to be moving the show to Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. for reasons. And we hope that that will also bring in a lot more listeners as it is a weekend show. So before I go, I just want to make sure that I read a couple of these last comments. Slice of Sci-Fi says, if I had my DVDs handy, I would be watching Crusade and the movies. However, they are deep in storage, so I can only watch what's on Comet TV. I dig that. I get that. I hope they get those other series on Comet TV or on at least on Amazon. John Bowersox, when Matt kills Rich, stop that. Why would you even mention that to me? You know how that would make me feel. I don't even. No, I'm not going to read that. No, we don't talk about Richie. Hey, did you know that Dylan Neal plays Foodie Detective movies on Hallmark Mysteries and Movies, and Bruce Boxleitner plays his dad? Yeah, and also Dylan Neal was also Professor Evo on Arrow, CW's Arrow. He played the creator of the android Amazo, which was awesome. I think it was season 2. Okay, Randy, dude, life does happen. You're absolutely right. I hope that you enjoy the show because we had a lot of fun here on the show. Thad, thank you for joining us. I'm sorry, dang, you work Sundays, but please make sure that you rewatch the show. I'm glad that you were able to make it. And for everybody who was here, thank you so much for joining us here on the ZócaloCast on our live chat. It will be hosted afterwards on YouTube. So make sure that if you didn't get a chance to see it, or if you're just catching us now, please make sure that you watch the rest of the episode as it is stored with the rest of our episodes here on YouTube. Thank you, Slice of Sci-Fi, for joining us because you are new to the video chat here, and I hope you get a chance to watch the rest of the chats and let us know how we're doing, because the Babylon 5 podcast is you're the godfather, godmother, you are the progenitor, you are the everything of Babylon 5 on social media. So, I listened to you for years, and I hope that we are at least carrying the torch as much as well as we can. So I appreciate you being here with us, and hopefully you'll be able to turn on some of your audience here to the ZócaloCast as well, both here online and on Facebook. So make sure that you check out the notes on the feed here. You have us on Instagram, on Twitter at ZócaloCast. You have linked to all of our Facebook videos that we did before we started doing YouTube. And we are so excited. Char and I are both so excited to continue this journey, and enjoy your rewatches. Enjoy what the rewatch does for you. Enjoy how it inspires you and brings you to new appreciations of Babylon 5. And until Sunday, now Sunday is going to be a great show, and I'm going to tease you what's going on with Sunday. All I have to say is see it or skip it. That's what Sunday is going to be about. I hope you have a chance to join us. It's been my privilege and my honor talking to all of you tonight. And to those of you who are going to be rewatching this on the YouTube channel, thank you for watching it. Thank you for subscribing. And thank you for joining us here on the ZócaloCast. So until next time, be seeing you.